Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying your weekend. Today's going to seem kind of a random lesson. It's actually an algebra review, all right? We're not going to have any geometry today or any new geometry concepts. The reason we're doing this is because this algebra topic is going to be coming up in what we're going to be doing, and just want to spend a day going over it, all right? Make sure we all know how to do it, and that is simplifying radicals, all right? If you don't remember, a radical is just another name for a square root symbol. So in order to simplify radicals, all right, the first thing you need to know is the perfect squares. Now, what is a perfect square, okay? Well, a perfect square is the result of squaring any whole number. So for example, 1 squared equals 1. So the first perfect square is 1. 2 squared equals 4. So the next perfect square is 4. And you can keep doing it like that. So 3 squared equals 9. Therefore, the next perfect square is 9. And hopefully you can keep counting, right? So like, what is 4 squared? 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. And then 10 squared is 100. So you can keep going, forever. The next one's 121, they keep going up. But those are the first 10. I don't think we're definitely not even going that high. But it's important to know these numbers, right, to be able to recognize them. So when you are simplifying a radical, okay, what does that mean? Well, simplifying a radical means the number inside the radical, all right, we want to make as small as possible. So that means part of that number we're going to be pulling outside of the radical. And the way that you do that is you're going to break up your radical. Now, when it comes to 12, right, 12 has a couple different pairs of factors. So we have 2 times 6, and we also have 3 times 4. So how do we want to break up 12, okay? Well, that's why we listed the perfect squares, okay? You always want to break up 12, or not just 12, any number, using one of your perfect squares, okay? The reason for that is because once you break them up, actually, so let's say, neither 2 or 6, right, is a perfect square. So 4 is the perfect square, right? 4 is a perfect square. So we want to break up 12 into radical 4 times radical 3, okay? And the reason we do this is because you can actually take the square root of perfect squares, right? You can't take the square root of 3. The square root of 3 is, an infinitely long decimal. But the square root of 4 is 2, okay? So we can actually turn the square root of 4, we can turn that into 2, okay? And by doing that, we now have 3 left under the radical. So this is a more simplified version of radical 12, right? 2 times radical 3. So that's what we mean by simplifying radicals, all right? Break up the radical into a perfect square and another number, then take the square root of that perfect square. So we're going to go ahead and do another example, all right, 28. What are the factors of 28? So 28, we have 2 times 14, and we have 4 times 7, and I believe that's it. So again, it's going to be the same as last one, all right? Neither 2 or 14 is a perfect square, therefore we're going to pick 4 and 7. So the square root of 28 equals the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. The square root of 4 then is 2, and so our final answer is 2 radical 7. All right, so pretty easy so far. I'm going to show you now 2 ones that can be a little bit trickier, all right? The first one that we're going to look at is radical 48. So the reason 48 is a little bit trickier is because 48 has a lot of factors, all right? We have 2 and 24. We have 3 and 16. We have 4 and 12. And we have 6 and 7. So of all these choices, all right, which one do we want to pick, okay? So you might be tempted to say this, right? We've done 2 examples where 4 is our number, 4 is a perfect square, therefore we should break this up into 4 and 12, okay? But if you pay attention, or if you look closely, 16 is also a perfect square, all right? 16 is also a perfect square right here. So what do you do if you have 2 perfect squares? You always want to pick the bigger number, okay? The reason for that is if you pick radical 4 times radical 12, this becomes 2 radical 12. But what do we notice about 12, right? Well, we just did a problem with 12. We know that 12 can be broken up further, so this is not completely simplified, all right? So you're just giving yourself more steps. If we pick the bigger perfect square, 16 times radical 3, the square root of 16 is 4. Now we have 4 radical 3, all right? And 3 is a smaller number than 12. So this is the completely simplified version. So you always want to pick the biggest perfect square. So most of the time, all right, this happens with 4 and 16 because any number 16 goes into, 4 is also going to go into it. So you got to be careful, all right, to make sure that 16 wouldn't be the correct answer. So this is our answer, all right, 4 radical 3. Last question, all right, 36. Okay, so 36, all right, this one's tricky for another reason, and maybe you know why, but let's go ahead and list this. So 36, we have 2 and 18, all right? We have 3 and 12, we have 4 and 9, and we have 6 and 6. So when we're looking here, all right, 2 and 18, not a perfect square. 3 and 12, not a perfect square. 6, not a perfect square. So our perfect square is 4, but notice also 9, okay? 4 and 9 are both perfect squares. So what does that mean, okay? Well, I'm going to tell you in a second, but let's write this out, all right? So the square root of 36, that equals the square root of 4 times the square root of 9. And now we know the square root of 4 is 2. And we also know the square root of 9 is 3. So what happened here is both square roots went away, right? So now we just have 2 times 3, which equals 6. Okay, so what happened in this problem, all right? Well, what happened is, what do you notice about 36, all right? 36 itself is a perfect square, okay? So if the number under your radical is a perfect square, you don't need to break it up at all, okay? We know the square root of 36 is 6, all right? Even if you didn't recognize that at first, this right here should have told you, all right? 6 times 6 is 36. That's 6 squared, right? So 36 is a perfect square. So we didn't actually need to do all these steps. We could have just skipped over all this and wrote square root of 36 equals 6, all right? So that's just, me trying to be tricky, all right? There is at least one on your practice problems like that, so just be aware, okay? So that should be all you need, all right? In class today, we are going to do these 10 problems, and that's it. So if you have any questions, all right, come to the Zoom session ready to ask them, and other than that, enjoy your weekend.